doing a video podcast.
Very first time doing a video podcast, and something we've talked about.
We have.
For sure. Whenever we talked about the book, we talked about this possibility, and I can't believe it's here.
I can't believe you're here. You used to live here in South Florida, you and Jeff and your whole family. And we're in the church, Christ Fellowship Stewart campus, that it all started, and I met you guys.
Yes, this is where full-time ministry started for me. I had been in the church my whole life because I grew up as a pastor's kid. So I grew up in church and volunteered and served in church my whole life, but didn't get into full-time ministry until later in life. And you were my first boss.
Oh my goodness, I was a boss. Yeah, now I'm a friend. You're staying with my wife and I. Well, everybody, this is our very first episode on a book we wrote called Give Your Job Away. And this is a book that you and I were talking about. We actually lived this before we read it, didn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. We had lots of experience in those first few months of ministry, and grew into just a philosophy that we both were living out, and decided to put all of those things into a book.
Well, Michelle, you are so gifted as a writer and a communicator. Like, I'll talk around something and then you just put it in one nice, neat, and tidy phrase. What's the phrase you talk about how you maximize or optimize your...
Yes, I believe that giving your job away is all about maximizing the capacity of ministry leaders, and also optimizing the body of Christ.
See what she just did there? This is why what I used to do with you is you and me and a few other staff would come in my office, and I, as not just the boss, the leader, the campus pastor, I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do next and how we're going to do it. And we talk and talk and talk, and then you listen, and you just give one nice little phrase. We're just going to maximize the ministry and optimize people. It was great. and one of the I think the premise of this book, or the problem, I would say, of this book that we were trying to solve is we realized very quickly our gaps. Mm-hmm. Talk about like gaps. I mean, what was that about?
I don't think you start off in ministry and that's the first thing that pops into your head. Oh, right. I need to be aware of my gaps. No, I think you go into ministry and you're like, what can I prove? Like, what can I show as measurable results? And those are all good. We want those measurable results in church ministry because it means that we're building the kingdom. But I think in an effort, and probably it comes from growing up in a pastor's home, and in past generations, the way they did ministry was a pastor did it all the time. And no doubt a servant is worthy of his pay was the driving motivation behind our parents, who worked hard by doing it all, morning, noon, and night. So we learn from that. We emulate that. And it took coming to the point of my limitations. And for me, that was a one moment that I could point to. I'm not sure of that for you, but I could point to a moment where I was like, okay, I can't do this. I need help.
It was interesting when I got to know you and Jeff, who moved from Ohio to here, and you were a pastor's kid. You and your brother grew up in ministry and are in ministry, and I was a pastor's kid. I'm a third-generation pastor. And so as I was looking at some team members that could jump in as we were growing and transitioning as a church, we're in 2024 now, so I know things the way we used to do it in 1960s, 70s as my parents did is different. But what I loved, Michelle, about you is I knew you understood the commitment, the heart, the grind, the initiative that it takes, and then the spiritual disciplines it takes. I didn't have to teach that to you, understood that. So that's a good place for us to start as both pastors' kids. But you're right. You're asking, did I have a moment when I realized that I was and we write about this in our first chapter of the book, that you more found it because you're more humble than I am. I struggle with pride. I struggle with pride because I think that I'm a high belief, high optimist. I think I can do it all. And you're right. I did see my parents as performers, as responsible as they started a church. Yeah. There was no denomination. There was no Christ Fellowship or ARC churches. There was just them and God and faith. Hard work, going first, faith. So I've always led that way. I loved it. But you're right. I think that my issues were not so much, I I think I have gaps. I think I kept on thinking I could be everything, do everything. And so I was resisting. I was resisting the awareness and the humility of I can't do it all. Can't be. And here's what happened is when I resisted it or I wasn't fully self-aware, my work got sloppy. I was late to things. I was unprepared, overconfident, underprepared, and there were. I think the gaps were painful because I saw the areas, and especially when you're at a multi-site church. You now have other campuses, other leaders to compare yourself to and say, man, she has it going on.
Yeah.
Or he is so excellent in this, or their ministry in this area is so great. And I started to realize it's not as great here.
Yeah, and I think even if you're not in a multi-site mega church environment, you still have the tendency to look and see what other people, because now we have social media and we can compare ourselves to what appears to be successful on the other side of a screen in other churches that are maybe our size or maybe a little bit bigger. So in this day and age, I think that competitiveness, that performance is still a motivation because I think in ministry, somehow we believe we can manipulate the variables for kingdom success. And that's not always the truth. We can't do it ourselves. I think we're a piece of manipulating the variables because we have something to offer. We all have something to offer. But I think Christ gave us the model that the more we bring into the scenario and solution, the more people that we bring in, the more effective we are. And sometimes it doesn't feel that way whenever we have our own issues of control or making impressions or pride. Those things that we want to conceal become hindrances to exposing gaps that we need to expose so that kingdom ministry can be more successful.
I love the couple words you used there, control and conceal. That's me. Because I think, yes, I've become aware of my gaps and where I'm not great at and where I'm sloppy and where I'm not as naturally gifted at. And we all want to lead in our strengths, and we should, which we talk about that. But I guess I was concealing some of the areas that I don't quite know it as well as everybody else. Now, and I also love what you said, Michelle, that there are people that are listening here that you are leading at all spectrums. Maybe there are volunteer leaders that have a Bible study in their home or a missions project in the community. They lead at their school. There are people that are part-time staff members who are leading a church and working a job in a church of 100 to 500. And I was with a pastor in Port St. Lucie, which is in South Florida, and he had me speak to 25 volunteer leaders.
That's incredible.
Not one paid person. And they were wonderful and leading it, but trying to figure out things. And so why I bring that up is if you're looking at a larger church or the social media and all of that, you're assuming, well, they can pay staff, they have the resources and budgets and the buildings. And that's true. But what we learned, because we were part of that, is in our microcosm of responsibility, we felt that fear of how do I do all this?
Yes, it feels even more all-consuming because there's so much more at stake, it seems. And I think any pastor of any church, whether small or large, feels that weight of spiritual kingdom responsibility. We want to steward what we have well because souls matter. And I think a good pastor with the pastor's heart is going to feel that more sincerely.
That's right.
And so I think for them especially, being aware that they have gaps and need to bring people into that gap will not alleviate the burden, but partners. You have partners now inside of that burden of kingdom ministry.
That's so true that everybody who's in ministry, whether they're paid as a professional or they're volunteering, they're probably in it for the right reasons.
Oh, no doubt.
They're in it because this isn't just a profession and a job. You won't last more than 6 months. Whether you're in a church by yourself, in a rented school. I have a friend in Boca that helps our church, and he's in a little storefront, and he works a side job. So we and those people, those of you, you're in this for kingdom work, as you said, and the beauty of that is this responsibility, this commitment, go the second mile. My dad taught me, lead first, give first, sacrifice first.
Yeah.
But I think that makes us made me not aware or afraid to admit gaps around me.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are so afraid of admitting gaps?
I think a lot of it has to do with the sincerity. They want to bear the burden, and they don't want to put that burden on anybody else. But
good.
Here's the thing. As Christ followers, we're all called to the Great Commission.
Yeah.
So I think whether you're called to full-time ministry or called to marketplace vocation, we all feel this burden. So to share with a layman, for a pastor to share with a layman that burden and to bring them alongside, it's not like we're asking someone to step out of something that God hasn't called us already to do.
Right. That's so good. Yesterday, I was talking to a young adult leader who is starting to have vision and grow his ministry in one of our campuses with all volunteers, no staff, and he's successfully inspired people to invite more and reach more. He's having like 3 or 4 people a week that are serving. But he said, how do I raise up leaders to now own at a higher level? Like I've got people who are inviting and serving at the doors in traffic, but he said, Matt, these guys have full-time jobs. They're in school, and I feel bad. How do I pay them?
Yes.
Because he was afraid of giving, because he felt the responsibility of working hard. So I wonder.
That's exactly right. That's the feeling.
Yeah.
That's the hesitancy of, I don't want to give my job away because I'm afraid I'll be rejected or other people are busy. Like you're already putting excuses on those volunteers that we know from experience, these volunteers are more than ready and willing to partner inside of our gaps.
Well, and so that it's the fear of giving away responsibility because I'm responsible and it's my job and they have a job. The other thing I think, if I'm being honest, talking about grappling with gaps is I realized when I started to admit my gaps and then even like show them to you and my boss and it's like I'm not worthy of this role. I think that touches my heart.
Yeah.
Because there are men and women who have a call of God. They've said yes to the Lord. There's gifting and passion.
Yes.
And yet they start to, it's what I'm reading through Moses right now. Exodus chapter 19 or so. And the burning bush. And the first thing Moses says is, I've got gaps.
Right. Exactly.
And God has called him. Right. And I'm with you, I'm calling you, and he's going to equip him, but he admits gaps. And so I struggle to admit, Michelle, you're looking to me to lead, and I don't know if I have it to lead. And that's one of the reasons we wrote this book, is to encourage and inspire people. Keep leading, stay encouraged. God has given you everything he's put in you, but it's not what he's just put in you. The gaps reveal what he's put around you.
Yes, I think that is what we talk about in the book. Gaps are not admitting where you're bad, wrong, or broken.
Good.
That's not the point of identifying gaps. Gaps are opportunity for God to fill. And I love Ephesians talks about he will make us complete. The God who fills all things makes us complete. And the only way we can invite God into those empty places of our life so that he can fill us is by identifying where he can fill us. I think we need to identify it first and then invite him in to those empty spaces. So that's what I view gaps as, opportunities for me to invite God to fill me and make me complete in him.
I hope you're listening to that. That's so good, because we've talked about the grappling with gaps, the pride, the lack of self-awareness, the feeling of putting on burdens on people. So this book isn't just acknowledging gaps. We give you a whole process. And Michelle, you've done a phenomenal job of very clear processes, exercises that you would have been working with churches and teams on.
Yes.
We don't just help you be aware of the gaps, we help you fill the gaps.
Yes, and invite God into the places that he wants to fill, because he promises that he will fill all things. And I think going back to identifying gaps, Paul, I was reading in Titus, and Paul commissions Titus. He says, set to order the things that are lacking. I'm not sure that we know that we have permission to have an eye for what is lacking. Sometimes
that's great.
I think we think that that's somehow unspiritual or judgy for us to go into a place and say, ooh, that's not quite right. But actually, that's what Paul told Titus to do. Look, see what's lacking, and then set it in order. Make it right. And that's exactly what identifying gaps does. It helps us set things in order.
And part of it, what sets in order is who will help you set it in order. That's why you and your husband, Jeff, and your kids, you didn't just come in and tell us what's wrong or tell us where the gaps were. You filled the gaps. You were a great gap filler to me. And then you gave me, we'll talk about this in other episodes, you gave me gap fillers on my team that are still serving with me today. So I'm so thankful for you. And everyone, we have this book, Give Your Job Away. It's on Amazon.com. We have Audible, we have ebook, we have printed version. We also have a website, giveyourjobaway.com, where we'll have these video podcasts. We'll be on YouTube. And we're available. Even you can Instagram, Facebook us, connect with us, because we will actually go and serve pastors, leaders, teams. And so however we can serve you, we'd love to do that. And continue to watch our video podcasts, and it's going to be on a podcast. We'll figure it out.
Yes, thank you.